Welcome, Mr. Mbulelo. Mayikana. Thank you very much. You know, when I started podcasting, the idea of podcasting was about conversation. I was actually a little bit frustrated at the fact that we don't talk.
Mhm.
Then I meet you, and not only do you speak, but you write down.
Yes.
An author that has written 10 books plus.
Right.
Explain to me. But welcome anyway. I wanted to start off with just the true acknowledgement of, I would have never imagined that there is such, because we don't write things down.
Yes.
You go to exclusive books, you're not going to see.
Yeah.
You're not going to see our stuff.
Yeah.
Tell me about the book writing. Not just the book writing, the 10 books.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about
I think I'm a very observant and analytical person.
Yeah.
Who also I would like to maybe categorize myself as someone who's also a deep thinker.
Okay.
That when I see things, I normally don't just look at the surface in terms of things that I see or observe. I look at what is underneath whatever that I'm observing, or what I hear, or what I see, and want to know as to what influences it. Because for me to then be able to understand it, I always have this belief that I need to have an understanding as to where does it come from. Because I think me just looking at what I see, I could actually just attach a superficial meaning to whatever that I see, or to whatever I hear, or to whatever I observe. But when I'm able to find out as to from what point or what influences what I see or observe or hear, then that enables me to have a deeper understanding of whatever that I see, observe, or hear. So I've always been that kind of a person. Even when I was growing up, I remember my friends used to say that I think like a grown up. I'm an old man.
But what and thinking is one element. Thinking is one component, and I consider myself quite an avid thinker as well.
Yes.
But I have not translated that from here to hand to writing. How did you? Firstly, what made you do that, and what gives you the impetus to do it so many times?
Yeah. Well, I mean, writing has been something that I've always wanted to do, because when I have thoughts, and I think maybe there are a number of people like me, when you have thoughts, that are running in your head, and sometimes you can't even sleep because you have these things that are in your head.
Yeah.
And the best thing that you can do maybe is to have a notebook next to you, not because you're troubled by something, but you have these thoughts, and you just take your notebook next to your bed and just you write whatever notes that are coming into your head. And that enables you to sort of empty your head and have those things on a notebook, and you're able to sleep. So I've always wanted to write books about things that I observe, and also my thoughts about things that I observe, and things that I see, and in some instances, things that I personally have gone through.
Yeah.
So I've always wanted to write books as far back as 2010. I always wanted to write books, but that thing about sitting down and writing has always been a challenge. Such that I think at some point I bought a machine where I thought I would just perhaps talk, and the machine, a recording, would just record that, and then I would take this to someone.
I found an app.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I would take this to someone and say, type this for me.
Yes.
I, however, realized that, I could do that. But sometimes you would find that you can change your mind about something and say, okay, this is what I think now. But with time, and you find that you change your mind, or you have an alteration in terms of the way that you were thinking about something or how you observed it.
Yes.
And I felt that if I write a book myself rather than just dictating and someone typing, maybe that gives me also the latitude to sort of change things at the time that I want to change. But what then made me to be able to write so many short books within a short space of time is that I had been writing but on short, like I said, on notebooks and pads and all that since 2010, and different topics. And when in 2020, beginning of 2020, we then experienced COVID.
All right.
Yes, we experienced COVID, and there was this lockdown, and I said, there's no way I can just sit and do absolutely nothing. I have bags and bags of information that I've sort of over the years written on notebooks and all that stuff. Why don't I just put this now in books the way that I've always wanted to do? And I started with one book, and I had two editors, because I would send the first draft to the one editor. When she's done editing it, I then take the book and send it to the next editor.
Okay.
And the
Was
intention,
that for the double checking?
yes, double checking, but not just double checking, because I wanted to check as to whether perhaps my writing, the content and the style, would it appeal to different sectors of the population. That is obviously black, white, young, old, I just wanted to check as to which sector, and they also, apart from just looking at content, their task was to look as to whether perhaps the content, who would it appeal to, because they are editors, they've been editing books, so they know as to what content would appeal to what sector of the population. And also the language in the books, is it accessible language? Would people understand maybe the terminology that I use in the books and all the stuff? So apart from me just wanting to write, I had to make sure that these books are books that people would be able to understand what exactly I'm trying to communicate in terms of the language. If I use a particular term, which is perhaps not the usual term that we use in everyday language, would I need to sort of explain the term?
Yes.
Would I need to interpret as to what it means and maybe give an illustration in terms of that? Therefore, the editors then were there for that, not just to look at content, but to be able to say, Mbulelo, when you look at this, I think there will be a problem in terms of people understanding. Can you rephrase it such that it's accessible?
I think what you're doing is amazing in two levels. The one level is, firstly, you're teaching us, me, aspiring writer, exactly the process of writing. But I think there's something that you said that you've jumped over, which is so relevant. And that is that when 2020 came along, you had already got bags and bags of written information. So your vision, going back as far back as 10 years before that, was already being transcribed in a small way. But as you say, I didn't quite sit down and actually fulfill this. And then an event that nobody is expecting comes along, and all of a sudden you've got 10 books that and that just talks to this persistence and consistency in following the thing that you want to do, even though you haven't quite got there yet.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I always say to people, one of the things that determines whether perhaps you do manage to fulfill or realize your purpose in life is you being persistent with what you have as your dream and your vision in terms of life. And unfortunately, in this world today, where people, for instance, want instant gratification, that becomes difficult for some people to understand that, because they want things now. They want things to happen now. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but there is joy in seeing something that you have worked, and trying to bring to fruition for so many years, coming up nicely, and you get satisfaction, and you say, I've achieved one of my life's purpose. Because one of the things that I love more than anything else is engaging people.
Yeah.
I love that. Engaging people, because it doesn't only allow me to test the things that I'm thinking about, it also allows me to sort of learn from other people in terms of how do they see the very things that I see. Do we see the things the same way? If we don't, why don't we see things the same way? can my thinking be altered by how they see things? Or can their thinking be altered by the way that I see things? And I think for me, that is the value that I have. And I think this is what I said earlier on, even when I was very young, people used to say that I think like an old person. Because for me, it was more like, let's engage, let's talk, let's not argue, because there's a difference between having a conversation and having an argument.
Mm.
An argument is something where you're trying to win a discussion. You're trying to win a discussion and you come with all the tricks that possibly you can come up with in order to win the discussion. Whereas a conversation, the intention is to listen and be listened to. And therefore, for me, I've always liked conversations because I always believe that I grow from conversations. I grow and learn things in some instances that I did not think about. And some of the things that I hear from other people also influence and alter the way that I think and see life. But at the same time, there are instances where I stick to my guns because perhaps I would have done a lot of thinking and research behind whatever that I would talk about. And therefore believe that whatever that I'm saying, it is something that has got a backing in terms of what I'm saying. Some people just talk because they've heard other people say something. I don't like talking about things because I've heard someone say something about it.
Yeah.
I like creating my new knowledge and new information on something and then testing it in terms of what are people thinking about it? What do people think about it?
I wish people would do that about the vaccine. Because I mean, when you think about the vaccine, everybody's just listening to everybody else.
Yes.
Right? Nobody's actually assessing from their own personal diagnosis and saying, okay, this is what I've experienced.
Yes.
This is what I've gone through.
Yes.
Now that I think this, how does this tie up with everything else that's going on? They're doing it the other way around,
Yes.
right? They're going and extracting information from outside and then defining it for themselves.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing that's quite important about what you're saying about engaging and conversation, and this comes to your organization, is there are times when you can actually have conversations that are a little bit outdated, right? Or you can be masking your conversations with outdated information.
Yep.
And I think the construct of your organization, contemporary conversation, right, actually talks to something that's very significant because we're now saying, okay, I know what it used to be.
Yes.
Or I know what you expect it to be.
Yes.
But let's talk about what is actually being said.
Yes.
Right now.
Exactly. Exactly. I think one of incidentally when you talk like that, there is this expression, and people don't like it, but I believe in that expression. This expression that people sometimes annoys people. The expression that says, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It annoys people because it's some sort of defeatist expression, that people don't like because people like changing things and say, no, you can change things. So the fact that as human beings, we keep on evolving, certain things that we used to believe as ones that constitute what life is and what relationships, if you talk about relationships, are, have sort of been nullified by that involvement. If you look at morals, for instance, what we used to call morals previously and what we call morals now, there's a huge difference in terms of. And if you are a person that is still stuck on what was, you're going to be in trouble. So you need to be able to sort of look at things as they are and say, it is what it is. It doesn't mean that you like it or you're satisfied about it, but it simply means that it is what it is. The way that it is expressing itself, that's how it is. You might not be happy, you might not be satisfied with it, but the fact is you need to go on with life because that's how it's expressing or showing itself.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right because you can be slightly dogmatic in nostalgia.
Yeah.
The good old days.
Yes.
And being dogmatic around nostalgia doesn't necessarily progress anything.
Yeah. That's
It doesn't. It means we're all stuck.
Yeah.
We've moved there, but we're stuck here.
Mm.
And tell me about, and I like the conversation and the way in which you're expressing this engagement as opposed to, confrontation, as these, because engagement is a win-win. And I have this theory about the US of A, and I think I've expressed it to you, that I don't know a country that talks as much as the USA. I was in ESPN. I mean, they're just channels where people are just talking about everything. If it's not sport, it's celebrities, it's the news. I was on, CNN just now. It's just a consistent hive of talking, and it's also a conglomeration of talking and conversation, right? So it's everybody from CEOs of major organizations down to the everyday man, right? And we don't do that. I don't know when you last heard the president of Ghana speak, or the president of whatever speak, or the CEO of a major organization come up and chat. Tell me about what you find important about conversation.
You see, like you said earlier on, there's a problem with us in the absence of continual conversation to be dogmatic in terms of how we look at things. And once we become dogmatic, we then are left behind in terms of other nations, like you're saying, who keep on advancing in terms of how they're able to do things. Because we're still stuck on how things were or how we wanted things to be. And again, having continued conversations about different aspects within the society also enables creativity to sort of come up in terms of solving a number of challenges that we might have. Because life requires continual search for solutions for challenges that we're experiencing. Now, these challenges could be in any sector or environment. It could be in terms of corporate, it could be in terms of the economy, it could be in terms of relationships, it could be on anything, including COVID-19 that we were speaking about earlier on. Now, conversations enable that, because when we continue to have conversations, that's when we're able to say, when someone talks and say, I didn't think about that. Thank you for raising that. Tell me what influences you in terms of saying that. And then we sort of get the richness in terms of ideas, then in terms of how we solve a number of things. I mean, I'm going to make an example. One of the challenges that we have in South Africa that we continually see in news is the whole issue around gender-based violence. My frustration in terms of how, for instance, this whole aspect is dealt with, it is dealt with through continued rhetorics that are actually put on the news and labeling that then takes place and all this stuff. But I don't think we have enough conversations around it in terms of what causes gender-based violence. The only thing that, for instance, you'll hear toxic male masculinity and all this stuff.
Men are trash.
Men are trash. And I ask, but why are they trash? And some would say, for instance, toxic masculinity, and what causes that? And some people, I mean, there's a lady that said, we're dealing with badly raised men. I then asked her, who raised them? And she didn't like my question.
Well, it was a very pertinent question.
She didn't like my question because for me, it just showed that you go in with the rhetorics. I don't think you think deeply before you say something. Because when you're then going to say it's badly raised men, perhaps you might have a point. Maybe then you need to expatiate and then tell us what you mean by badly raised men and who badly raised these men. Because you might find that it sort of sometimes your statement by sort of, it nullifies itself if someone asks you a question. Because you won't be able to answer, or you wouldn't like the answer that is there for the question, for the statement that you've made. Like this lady that I said, who badly raised the men? Because if I then say that the women were involved in raising the badly raised men, she's not going to like that. So then for me, it's important that we just don't focus on the rhetorics, but we really have deep conversations in terms of why things happen the way that they happen. Because solutions are going to come from the richness of the conversations that we're going to have.
So this conversation around relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I don't want to be flippant about this, but let's take it back to its basics around raising. Let's be specific around men to start off with. It's to your point done by either in most cases now the mother, because the statistics are that single parenting is at its highest in the absence of men, or a mother and a father. And in a smaller case where the dad is the person who's raising the children. Then I think what I want to ask you is, in your analysis of this, the transition of the relationships that are created between those who copulated and had the child, right, to the child being born and then going out and becoming a man. Let's start at this point of relationships. What is going on and going wrong at this starting point here?
You're making me very excited because this is where perhaps I normally have the gist of my conversations about relationships. Vic, my thinking, and it doesn't have to be everyone's thinking about how relationships go and what goes wrong and all that, but this is my take. One of the things that we should not forget is the fact that as human beings, we're just a highly evolved species. But we are just like the other animals that you'll find, in the wild and all this stuff in terms of certain instincts. We still have certain primal instincts, inborn inclinations in terms of how we are actually wired. Yes, we are high-level species that has been blessed with high levels of reasoning and also intellect and perhaps brain function and all the stuff. But at the basic level, we still are animals. We still have certain primal instincts that we have. Let me take you back a bit, if I can. If you go to the wild and go to animals, if you look at male animals, their primary concern is to, when they look at females, is to mate and spread their seeds far and wide and ensure that their bloodline continues. There isn't a concern about raising kids. There isn't concern about providing for the family, except for certain species of birds and all the stuff. But when you look at mammals and you look at primates, there is no concern around, for instance, I need to feed this lady. Okay. I need to make sure that the kids are raised and all this stuff. If the male sticks around, the intention is just to protect the females that are in the pack so that he has females that he can mate with as often as he wants to. But he doesn't provide for them. They provide for themselves. They provide also for the litter that comes from the mating that takes place. In fact, a number of males, when you go to the wild, they mate and actually go away after mating. And the females, they see how to finish on their own. And the next time that he sees the females, they just come to check as to which one is in season in order to mate. And again, they move. I mean, if you look at elephants, you look at some species, for instance, if you look at lions, the lion sticks around only because he doesn't want other males to come and spread their seeds and have their litter. And in fact, when the invading male lion comes, he kills the cubs so that the females can be in season again, so that he can be able to sort of spread his seed, and his bloodline is the one that is going to continue. Now, that happens. That's how males are wired, okay, to spread their seeds. Now, a male can approach, but a female is the one that determines as to whether there's going to be any mating that's going to take place.
Yeah, that's true.
The female would then look for the most dominant male to be able to mate with, because then that ensures that there's going to be a strong bloodline. And that's why males in the wild, they would fight to death in order to get the attention of the female, and the female chooses them. They fight and there's blood, and some they kill each other and all this stuff, because there needs to be dominance. The female would then say, okay, I'm taking that one that is dominant. And if you're not dominant, you're chased away. And in some instances, even if you are dominant and there's a new one that comes and that becomes more dominant than you chased away.
Yeah.
And the female accepts you.
Yeah.
Now, when you look, therefore, at males, that's what males do. They want to spread their seeds. Now, let's bring that to humans. How do we differ from those animals? The only thing that makes us differ is the fact that we have high intellect, when we have high reasoning power, and we have constructed certain things that one can call social constructs.
And we can overcome instinct.
Yes,
So we
exactly.
can overcome instinct.
Some of us can control our primal instincts, okay? Can control our primal instincts. But what makes us to be able to control our primal instincts is the intellect, it's the social constructs. It is the laws that are put in place to make sure that we behave. Okay. A number of things that we've put as human beings to make sure that we don't behave like the animals. Okay. So when you go back to the caveman days, women wanted to attach themselves to strong men who would go out and kill the mammoth and bring the meat at home and be able to sort of fight the dangerous animals that were around and whatever invading tribes that might be there and all this stuff.
The warrior syndrome, isn't it? You're attracted to the warrior.
Yes, exactly. So that then means that women, even then, they were attracted to dominant mates, not dominating mates, but dominant mates who show the ability to be able to hunt, to bring the food at home, protect the family, and make sure that life continues and the siblings or the kids are able to grow because he's providing protection.
I think the point you make is a very important one. So it's dominant males.
Yes.
Not dominating.
Yes, not dominating males. Dominant males, because remember, the female still is the one that chooses whether there's going to be a relationship or not. And women wants, or a female wants a dominant, not dominating. Now, we can take this, move it now from caveman days to contemporary life. Dominant male during caveman days and also during the agricultural period meant that it's a man that is able to sort of provide food, a man that is able to sort of protect the family. Caveman days against wild animals and all that stuff. A male that is able to provide leadership and all that stuff. That hasn't changed. The only thing that has changed is the fact that the way that people see those things right now is different from how those people used to see them at that time. Provision is still one of the things that, for instance, women or females will still look at. Protection is still one of the things that females would look at. Leadership is one of the things that females will still look at. But that is always contextualized. Leadership, provision, and protection for a woman that stays, or female that stays in a squatter camp is different from leadership, protection, and provision to a female that stays at Sentin in the summer, who's able to sort of bring her own money and is able to lead. He's a big shot in an organization and can lead the homestead and all the stuff. That's different. So one of the things, therefore, that bedevils relationships, unfortunately, is the fact that when we look at how we have evolved over time from the caveman days, and you contrast that in terms of what is happening, animals haven't changed, they remain the same. When you go to the wild, what they were doing whatever years ago is still the same thing. They look for the dominant male as to what a dominant male means. That's exactly the same. But because we've evolved as human beings, a dominant male has changed over time. And also, what therefore women look at in terms of a dominant male is different from how women used to look at a dominant male in the 1930s compared to where we are right now.
So the change over time now is predicated on societal values and societal norms and how society
has evolved.
Yes,
has evolved. Exactly. I mean, if you look at, for instance, what used to happen in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, for that matter, we still followed a particular way of life where you'd find that the man is the one that brings the bacon.
Yeah.
Okay, the bacon home. And therefore, in terms of provision, therefore, he was a dominant person that the female in the home could look at. Okay. In terms of protection, he could protect the family in terms of making sure that the secure home, house, and all and everything else. And he provided leadership because he could go out there and get the work and make sure that the family is fed and all this stuff. But we have moved with a lot of laws and movements that have come that look at emancipation of women to make sure that women can do things themselves. So whereas you would find a lot of women that would stay at home in the past, you have a lot of women that do not stay at home now, who go out there and work and get paid. And in some instances, they're important people in terms of the corporate world. So therefore, the role that was played by a man in terms of provision has sort of changed.
Yeah.
Because then, if as a man, I have been raised to believe that my role is to provide, but this female says, I can provide for myself. So what does provision then mean? Because if as a man, I know that is my role, to provide, therefore there's something that has been taken away from me that proves that I'm dominant. I can no longer be dominant anymore. The female on the provision side can now be dominant.
Yeah, so it's a deep-seated change of mindset, whereby I think society's evolution or evolvement
Yes.
has been significantly quicker than the average man's thinking.
Exactly. You've hit it on the nail.
We are still stuck in what we said earlier on, back in the 1970s.
Yeah.
And in currently in the year 2021.
Yeah.
Women are capable.
Yes.
And it's not just, I think that also added to this is that we're assuming we're giving permission as men.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the case.
Yeah.
This is not a case of all of a sudden we're saying, okay, yes, you can be an engineer.
Yes.
We'll allow you to be
Yeah.
an engineer. Oh, as I heard, we've got, parity 50-50 gender.
Yeah.
It's the fact that they've always and are capable of doing what they do.
Yeah.
And have been subjugated to be able to do it.
Yeah.
That both the evolution of time
Yeah.
and the evolution of mindset is saying, okay, now this must happen.
Yeah.
And we're not catching up to that.
Yeah. No. You see, the evolution of women, contemporary women, has far outpaced the evolution of men in terms of what we used to know as our role as men. Because, if you were used to saying, my role is to provide for this family, that proves that I'm a man. Once that is taken away from you, what are you then remaining with that says, I'm a man?
And added to that, I think, and you're absolutely spot on, added to that, in the absence of men, there are no men saying to young men or men, by the way, this is now what defines you as a dominant man.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, what defines you as a dominant man today is the understanding that women have a role to play in society.
Exactly.
If you can do that, that makes you a dominant man. As a matter of fact, actually, to your point, the women are attracted to men who understand that there's equality in the relationship.
But I want to differ with you slightly.
Okay, let's do that.
I agree with you, but remember, I said much as we can evolve to the highest level that we're at right now, there's certain primal instincts that we still have.
Yeah.
That evolvement doesn't take away. And we end up being confused exactly as to how we're supposed to do things. Because I can tell you, even though women have evolved and they can be able to do a lot of things for themselves, I have met a lot of women in my sessions who say, despite the fact that I can earn a lot of money, I still want his money. I still want his money. And then where does that take you in terms of then saying, my role as a provider has been taken away by my partner? And it confuses men and say, okay, but what is it exactly what is expected from us? Because you tell me that you can actually make things on your own. You can make it on your own. You have a good salary and all that stuff. But at the same time, you then say, you still want my money, not because you really need it, but you want it. Because there's a difference between needing something
Yeah.
and wanting something.
I'm smiling because you're reminding me of my single days. So, before I met my wife, it was a very interesting conversation as a single man.
Yes.
And it actually, funnily enough, boiled down to exactly what you just said. Because I couldn't separate this thing of, if I'm dating you and you're professional, right? And I've got my house here and you've got your house there. What happens to your house?
Yes.
When, if this was to get serious?
Yeah.
And the answer was always, no, I keep my house, but I move into your house.
Yes.
And I'm like, that's, for me, it was almost a discouraging thing, because to your point, you get the sense that this is about wanting what's yours.
Yes. No, exactly. It's wanting, not needing.
It's wanting. Yeah. No, they didn't need it. They're very,
Yes.
they're very, and as controversial as that may sound, it was always the defining decision as to whether or not this was going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
It was completely irrelevant when I, as I say, when I met my beautiful wife, I proposed within 3 months.
Yes.
And was married within 6, 7.
Yeah.
But the thing is that she's an independent person.
Yeah.
Was living her own life, running her own, running her own, working for herself.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't come in all of a sudden. All right. And I'll tell you what did come in for me, which is, I think, where if we say that the number one need, and I believe this, the number one need for women is security. Yes. A heightened level of security, and that can be broadened out into a lot of things.
In fact, before you continue, I think it's leadership. Leadership then that brings about security. Absolutely. And provision.
Yeah.
Because that leadership thing, that's what they need, and that leadership brings security and it brings provision. Okay, but can go ahead.
And leadership and a sense of security from a sense of you are here to protect me, yes. And that there are no others out there who are being protected in the same way as you're protecting me. But I think the other thing that for men that I found in reading this, that the number one need for men is honor.
Yes.
So what we gave each other mutually, and what I still get 10 years later, is this sense of honor. And honor means that even though, I may earn more than you, or even though I may be more significant in a position than you, I still honor you as the head, or I still honor you as the role that you play. Let's not even use the word head. I still honor the role that you play within our family, which then gives you that sense of, okay, if that is being provided for, then this sense of security even becomes more significant in terms of delivering against. And that's a dance that, I don't know,
I think we have a situation where we can say most people do this. And then, however, there will be an exception, or there will be exceptions to the rule. Where you would find that a number of people will be wired in a particular way, but you will then have an exception of exceptions. The example that you are putting now is an exception.
I'm like, no.
It's an exception, because let me tell you one thing. One of the things that I normally say is that I say this all the time, especially when I speak to younger people like Josh. I normally say a boy is born, but will remain a boy until he can prove that he is a man. In other words, I can simply say you are born a male, but you can remain a male for the rest of your life until you die of old age, but not graduate to being a man. Because it takes something else to graduate from being a male to being a man. For instance, being a male simply means that you want to go out there and spread your seed to far and wide and have as many relationships as possible, have mate with every woman that is there, but not care about who's going to raise the kids if, for instance, they get pregnant. And that's why you have people, for instance, and we have programs like Mbulelo and all the other programs that we have, which prove that we still have a lot of males that we have in terms of our society, not men. Because how do you sit wherever you are sitting and eat and sleep and not really be worried as to what is happening to your child? That's an animal that does that. The animals that I explained earlier, that mate, and then after that they go and say, female, you see what you can do in terms of raising the kid. Now, a lot of men, for instance, do not have proper guidance a lot of men do not have proper guidance in terms of how to become a man. Because a man does all the things that you've mentioned, where the man, for instance, would be able to lead, would be able to protect, would be able to provide. Then that makes you graduate to being a man because you're taking care of business. Otherwise, if you don't do that, you remain a man. There are successful males financially. Financially, they have lots of money, but they remain males. They are not men. Okay? They remain males. They are not men. Being a man cannot be equated to how financially successful you are. It can be equated in terms of how are you behaving in terms of the three things that we've mentioned: leadership, protection, and also provision. Equally, not one being higher and the other one being lower. Equally. I can say the same thing in terms of women, because we as men, in terms of our primal instincts, which unfortunately, if we get good guidance, we are able to sort of tame them, and our morals and also our laws enables us to then become men, and if we get good guidance. Because we're wired in terms of our instincts to spread our wings. That's what we are wired to do. Females, on the other hand, are wired to look for the dominant male, like I said to you. And the dominant male, in terms of human beings, would be a male that is able to do, again, the three things that I mentioned. Now, however, we have been overtaken by events and technology and all those things, such that there are females, again, that will always remain females until they die, and they will never graduate to being women, because they are still ruled by the primal instincts that says you need to be a dominant male. They cannot be able to sort of look at the times and say, this is what the time, these are the times, this is what is present. Let's say, for instance, now COVID. There are people that are actually struggling to provide, not because they do not want to provide. There are people that are struggling in terms of providing leadership because the environment is so chaotic, not because they are not natural born leaders. But the primal instinct of a female says, provide these things. I don't care what. If you don't provide, I move on to the next person that's available. And that's when these things about gender-based violence come in and all those things. I mean, if you look at this boy, for instance, that cut a girl child in Portal in Eastern Cape. Eastern Cape. When he was asked why did he said she cheated on me. But why could you then not just leave? Now you have a situation wherein there are females who are consumed by wants, not by needs, by wants, such that they put a lot of men under pressure. And it still doesn't give men the right to lay their hands on them. It doesn't. But I always say, well, let's not have superficial discussions. Let's go deeper and look at some of these things. Where you would find that, for instance, men these days are under pressure because their understanding of provisioning has sort of moved. Females have put the bar much higher in terms of what provisioning means. For instance, let me give you an example. Wanting a Louis Vuitton bag is a want, it's not a need. And if as a man I say I want to provide, all I'm thinking about is that lights need to be on. I need to make sure that there's food at home. Kids go to school. They have clothes and all that stuff. But if you're going to say, then you are not a good provider because you are not giving me the Louis Vuitton. And because I want to keep you, I don't want other males. I want to remain the dominant male. I break my back in terms of trying to get the Louis Vuitton bag, and I get it for you. And suddenly you have moved the goalpost now to a Gucci bag. And someone else is able to sort of dangle the carrot and say, I will get you the Gucci bag.
It's amazing that I remember when I was working at somewhere that will be named nameless, but they made me fly around all over the world, reporting into I had a lot of people around the world reporting into. And I remember traveling, and it was also during my singlehood. I remember traveling and always being asked to bring back something. Do you know, I actually have pride myself of having never brought anything back for anybody other than myself at the duty free.
Yeah.
Because to your point, there's this and there's this thing about being defined by what you can do.
Yes.
And certainly being defined by what you can provide. And it's I many years ago, a friend of mine once said to me, I was in, I can't remember what relationship, and I was trying to get out of it, and it wasn't happening, and it was like, so he said to me, Vic, don't forget sometimes when you're hunting, sometimes you're the hunted.
Yeah. Yes.
Which woke me up quite considerably to be able to assess whether or not is this about me or is this about what I have?
Yes. Yeah.
Or is this about what I can do? So tell me, I mean, what are your experiences?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that all this thinking comes from some deep
One
experiences.
of the things that I have found is that the reason why some females behave the way that they behave in terms of wants instead of needs doesn't sometimes, in most instances, come from them. It's us males that have created that environment. We have created that environment that when we meet the female, our desire to impress her is not realistic in terms of what we are capable of. I mean, let me give you an example. You know your budget is your wimpy budget.
Yes. Yeah.
But you take money from somewhere else and you bring it and then say, I'm going to combine it with the wimpy budget. I'm going to take this lady to the expensive restaurant. Right from the first date, you have set the bar very high in terms of what she then is going to think of you. Because you have said, this is me. I'm taking you to that restaurant. This is the life that you can get when you're with me.
I had a friend.
And Rex, you know that your budget is a wimpy budget. It is not that fancy restaurant budget.
I had a friend who used to test that out with first dates. And then tell the person we're going out to get some food and then go through the drive-through McDonald's.
Yes.
And just see what the reaction was going to be.
Yeah.
Right? Because I mean that's. But look, I think you're absolutely right. I think the I mean we've been doing it all for so long where somebody sits down and orders Johnny Walker 18-year-old, right, and then orders it with appetizer, and you don't have the gumption to say, listen, firstly I can't afford the Johnny
Yes.
Walker 18.
Yeah.
But secondly, you don't take it with appetizer.
Yeah.
I think there is a significant need for conversations around the understanding of that primary engagement that takes place, and the rule and the rules that are set.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things I did in my single life after 10 years of marriage and getting divorced was to study marriages and relationships. And one of the things and I became the avid Dr. Phil watcher, right?
Yeah.
For 10 years I watched Dr. Phil.
Yes.
I recorded him if I couldn't get to it, right? So I know Dr. Phil's Philisms. And one of the things about that I picked up is this thing about rules in relationships. Rules that you set as quickly and as at onset as possible in terms of how we engage. and what the engagement is going to look like. So coming back to the discussion about the unfortunate, incident that happened in the Eastern Cape. I mean, it's a tragic story of a young man who's 25 years old who's given up his life now. That's definitely life in prison.
Yeah.
Who you're saying, why didn't you just leave?
No, but Vic, the problem is, okay, you see that there are multiple challenges. And that's why these conversations are very important. When I was growing up, there was in Ngoni language a saying or an expression that says that boy is Isoka. Isoka simply means that you're a man amongst men. So in other words, ladies, for instance, you're not stuck to one lady. That simply means that you can get another lady if you want to. The problem with young people these days, because when you look at a lot of femicide that takes place, it is committed not by grown-ups, by grown-up men. It's committed by young men towards other young women or young females. You have these young men that have got this scarcity mentality. They don't have an abundance mentality, where they say, this is my trophy. I have this trophy. I need to protect this trophy. No one should have it. No matter how this trophy, for instance, treats me, how bad it treats me, I need to protect it. This is my trophy. Such that when this trophy wants to move away from you, you can't stand that. You can't stand that. You want to get rid of that trophy so that no one gets the trophy. Now, I might sound as if I'm objectifying women, but that's a realistic expression in terms of how some young men see their female counterparts or their girlfriends and all this stuff. But this is my world. You can never make someone your world. You can love someone, but you must have your own world that the person fits into. But you can't have someone that is going to be your world.
Look, you're absolutely right. As a matter of fact, I'm experiencing that right now with somebody that we know who is saying that in their relationship, somebody said to them, right, that the male said to them that, I can't even remember what the expression was. It was, I'm your everything. So they're leaving. Okay. She's leaving, and he's saying basically, you will never exist without me, kind of scenario.
Yeah.
And these are a young group of people, and I think, and I know, I can't believe time is already there. But what I wanted to ask is, and maybe delve on, because you're running out, and I think it's going to be I know it's going to be a very successful series. Love and relationships, Zooms, and for those who are listening in, please, you'll pick it up on the website, the Evaluate website. You see the posters there. They run every Sunday from 5 o'clock to 6 p.m. And we're talking about love and relationships. It's important. But I want to touch, on this element of the idealism and pragmatism, right? Yes. Because what you've just said is somebody's idealistic view of what is in the relationship, that this person is mine and they're my world and everything begins and ends here. Whereas, we know that practically that's not just how life works. I mean, give us a sense of that, because I think young people are entering relationships with an idealistic view of what needs to be, what should be. This is what a relationship looks like. We hold hands. And if we're not holding hands, something's wrong, right? We kiss, and if you don't kiss, something's wrong. We talk to each other for 2 hours every day, and if you drop that down to an hour, something's wrong. So what is your construct around these idealistic views about what relationships should be looking like?
I think we touched on this earlier on. When you look at idealism in terms of relationship, it is also influenced by, historical teachings that perhaps we got when we were growing up, and also dogmatic information that we have. I mean, religion is one of the things, for instance, that make us to be dogmatic and be idealistic about what relationships are supposed to be. So therefore, how we see a relationship, I mean, there are a number of things that I talk about in some of my books. And one of the areas that I sort of look at is the whole thing about trust in a relationship.
Woo!
Yeah? And look
Just remind us, that's the topic for the next podcast.
Yeah.
Trust.
Yeah. Trust in a relationship. I personally believe that it's an overrated social construct that people, however, put at the center of a relationship as the thing that makes or break a relationship. I personally disagree with it.
I'd be interested to know your views.
I disagree that it is the backbone of a relationship. It's a social construct. It is like any social construct, it is something that you can change your mind about it because it is a social construct. It is not something that we are born with. It's not ingrained in terms of our DNA. It's a social construct. And therefore, people that are idealistic, you would hear them talk about such things. If I cannot trust you, if there's no trust in the relationship, therefore the relationship does not exist. Whereas we have a lot of people that in the definition of what trust is, they are still in relationships even now. Where does then that put that thinking or saying that without trust that there's no relationship? I personally feel that there are a lot of social constructs that we have developed because of maybe religion or any other dogmatic viewpoint that we have put in relationships and have made us to be very idealistic, such that sometimes when a curveball comes, we find it difficult to be able to sort of understand that that's just life and become realistic and be able to sort of say, I am going to leave because in any way, this is life and life evolves. It's not stagnating. And I think if we had more time, maybe we'll have more time. I can go deeper.
No. Trust.
I'll go deeper in terms of this whole area around idealism and pragmatism in terms of relationship. Because I feel a lot of people that suffer in relationships are people that are very idealistic. People that are able to sort of adapt and live and be able to be okay with life are pragmatists. The realists, they actually are able to be okay with life and they move on quickly. And they are seldom depressed. They are not in psychologists' rooms and all this stuff. The idealists are the ones that are depressed all the time. They're in psychologists' rooms. They need therapy and all those things because they find it difficult to say, no, this is how things are supposed to be. Why are things not the way that I want them to be? So that's the challenge with idealists. And if, like I said before, you are in a relationship with an idealist and you're a pragmatic person, realist, you are in trouble. And however, you can sift through this thing during the dating stage if you have authentic conversations. Make sure that you have authentic conversations and you can be able to say that this is an idealist, I'm a pragmatic person. It's not going to work. No matter how beautiful the person is, move on. That's not the person for you. Move on.
Yeah, I think that's a skill that one has to learn is that sometimes you're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, and it's not going to work. But Mbulelo, this is what is described as a contemporary conversation.
Yes.
And I'm very interested in your views when we have the next one around really this construct of, as you say, around trust, around idealism and pragmatism. Trust for me has been interesting because I've learned that it's not a state of being. It's almost like it's not a transactional thing, right? It is.
In fact, one of the things that we need to talk about in the next podcast also together with trust is the transactional nature of relationships.
Yes, absolutely. We can do that.
Yeah.
Because absolutely. I mean, I think there are many things that people assume to be almost like things that fall from heaven. Like intimacy, for example. That it's meant to be. It's meant to. You have that instinctual feeling, and then somehow you and I have it simultaneously, and then. It doesn't work like that, does it? Right? Yeah. It's not. That's not how it actually functions.
Yeah.
But anyway, this was fantastic. 2 hours next time. I'm gonna have a drink by gin and tonic and we chat for a while. But thank you very much. And these are the kind of stuff that we need to have.
Yeah.
And thank you for leading.
Yeah. And thank you for listening and joining in this conversation that we've been having about love and relationships, and also other aspects that we have dealt with. There is more that you can get in terms of these conversations, and also books, and also documentaries in our website, Contemporary Conversations SA. You subscribe and you get more information, and also join in some of the seminars and the webinars that we would have, that will advertise from time to time. Let's continue talking, good people. This is the only way that we can be able to sort of advance as human beings and be able to deal with some of the social ills that bedevil our society. And this is also one way that we can be able to sort of solve some of the challenges that we have in our personal lives and in our relationships by having authentic contemporary conversations. I challenge you to join these conversations, and you will not regret, because you will learn and we will also learn from you. Thank you.